There is a particular kind of tension you carry that almost never announces itself. It doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't feel urgent. It doesn't even always feel painful. It feels more like a constant, low-grade pressure, as if part of you is always standing slightly apart, watching yourself move through the world. You notice how you speak before the words fully leave your mouth. You notice how your face settles into expressions that feel familiar, practiced, acceptable. You notice how your body knows where to stand, when to nod, how much space to take. None of this feels fake exactly. It just doesn't feel entirely yours. And over time, you stop thinking of it as something you're doing. It becomes something you are inside, quietly, all the time. You don't remember choosing this. It feels older than choice. It feels like something that slowly assembled itself out of small moments. Moments where being fully visible didn't feel safe, or useful, or welcome. Moments where being agreeable mattered more than being honest. Moments where staying steady mattered more than staying true. So you learned how to perform a version of yourself that fit, not perfectly, just enough. Enough to move through rooms without friction. Enough to be understood on the surface. Enough to avoid creating waves you didn't know how to survive. This performance didn't arrive all at once. It grew the way habits grow quietly, without ceremony. You learned which parts of you softened a room and which parts made it colder. You learned what was rewarded with closeness and what was met with distance. You learned when to explain yourself and when to stay silent. And none of this felt like a loss at the time. It felt like awareness. It felt like responsibility. It felt like maturity. You weren't trying to disappear. You were trying to stay connected. There is often a misunderstanding about this kind of adaptation. From the outside, it can look like confidence. It can look like composure. It can look like emotional intelligence. And sometimes, it is those things. But underneath, there is a quiet split that forms. Not violent, not obvious, but persistent. One part of you learns how to function. Another part of you waits. The waiting part doesn't protest. It doesn't demand attention. It just becomes still, tucked slightly behind the version of you that knows how to perform. Over time, you may forget the exact shape of what you're holding back. Not because it disappeared, but because it stopped being invited forward. It's still there, but it doesn't lead anymore. It watches, it listens, it adjusts. It learns how to survive inside a life that doesn't quite make room for it. This is not about pretending to be someone else entirely. It's subtler than that. It's about becoming very good at presenting the most acceptable version of what you already are. The calm version, the capable version, the version that doesn't need too much, the version that doesn't ask questions that might make others uncomfortable. And again, this doesn't feel dishonest. It feels considerate. It feels like care. It feels like reading the room and responding accordingly. But there is a cost to always responding. The cost shows up quietly. It doesn't shout. It hums. It shows up as a tiredness that sleep doesn't touch, as a feeling of being on even when you're alone, as a difficulty relaxing into moments that are supposed to feel safe. You might notice that even in rest, something in you stays alert, tracking tone, tracking expectation, tracking the possibility that you might be needed, misunderstood, or misread. Your body remembers that awareness keeps you safe, and so you stay aware. There is a particular loneliness that comes from being known only through the version of yourself that performs well. People may trust you, rely on you, admire your steadiness. They may feel close to you without ever quite touching the parts of you that feel tender, unguarded, unfinished. And you may not blame them for this. After all, they are responding to what you show. Still, something inside you may feel strangely untouched, as if you're always standing a step away from the connection you're participating in. This isn't a dramatic ache. It's a quiet absence, a sense that even when you are surrounded, something essential remains unseen, not ignored, just uninvited. The performance itself can become so smooth that you stop noticing it as an effort. It blends into your posture, your voice, your timing. You may tell yourself that this is simply who you are, composed, thoughtful, measured, and maybe that's true. But there is a difference between being grounded and being guarded. There is a difference between choosing calm and never letting yourself be unfiltered. That difference is subtle, but your body knows it. Your body knows because it carries the vigilance, the constant adjustment, the micro decisions about how much of yourself is allowed to surface in each moment. This doesn't feel like anxiety. It feels like readiness. It feels like responsibility. It feels like staying one step ahead of disruption. And disruption, at some point, became something you learned to avoid. Not because it was inherently bad, but because it cost too much. too much explanation, too much repair, too much emotional work that you didn't feel equipped to do at the time. So you learned to be smooth instead, predictable, steady. You learned how to make yourself easy to be around. There is kindness in that. There is care. There is intelligence. This pattern didn't come from weakness. It came from awareness. It came from noticing what kept things intact. It came from wanting stability in environments that may not have offered it freely. Still, the silent war remains. It's not a war with shouting or weapons. It's a war of small compromises, of moments where you sense something inside you wanting to move, speak, express, and another part quietly redirects it. Not harshly, not cruelly, just efficiently. You might not even feel the redirection happen. You only feel the aftermath, a faint dullness, a slight distance from yourself, a sense of being intact but not fully alive in the moment. This internal negotiation can become so constant that you stop noticing it as conflict. It feels like normal functioning, like adulthood, like being realistic, and maybe, in many ways, it is. But even realism has a weight when it never loosens its grip. There are moments when the gap between who you are and who you perform as becomes more noticeable. Usually in stillness, late at night, in quiet rooms, in moments where no one is asking anything of you, yet something inside you still feels held back, as if the performance hasn't been formally dismissed, as if you're waiting for permission to stand down, and that permission never quite arrives. So you stay upright, you stay coherent, you stay within the lines of the self you've learned to present. And again, this doesn't feel tragic, it just feels steady, controlled, slightly distant from something unnamed. If there is grief here, it's not loud, it's not the kind that demands attention. It's the kind that lives in the background, like a low note that never resolves. The grief of knowing there is more inside you than what gets expressed. The grief of sensing that you could take a deeper breath, if only it felt safe to do so. There may also be guilt, not the sharp kind, the quiet kind. The guilt of feeling tired when, by most measures, you are functioning well. The guilt of wanting rest from a role you chose without remembering when you chose it. The guilt of sensing a split and wondering if that means you're ungrateful, or difficult, or asking for something unreasonable. But this isn't about asking for more. It's about noticing what has been carrying you. The performance was never meant to replace you. It was meant to protect you. It stepped in when conditions required it. It learned how to move through complexity with minimal damage. It deserves recognition for that. Without it, you might not have found stability. You might not have found belonging in the ways you did. And yet, protection can become a permanent posture when there is no clear signal that it's safe to soften. So you live in a state of partial expression, enough to function, enough to connect, not enough to fully rest inside yourself. This doesn't mean you are broken. It doesn't mean you failed to be authentic. It means you adapted in a way that worked. And adaptations that work are hard to let go of, especially when they've become intertwined with your sense of identity. You may not even know where the performance ends and you begin anymore. That uncertainty can feel unsettling, or it can feel neutral, or it can feel like something you don't have the energy to untangle. And maybe it doesn't need untangling. Sometimes, simply seeing the pattern is enough to change how it sits inside you, not to dismantle it, not to overcome it. Just to acknowledge that there is a difference between the self that moves through the world and the self that waits quietly behind it. That waiting self hasn't disappeared. It hasn't been damaged by the years of restraint. It hasn't been diminished by silence. It has simply been patient, observant, still. There is something gentle in recognizing that patience without demanding anything from it. The silent war doesn't need a winner. It doesn't need resolution. It doesn't need you to choose sides. It can be seen as a long negotiation between safety and expression, one that made sense when it began, and still makes sense in many ways now. You are allowed to hold that understanding without turning it into a task. You are allowed to let the awareness settle without asking it to fix anything. You are allowed to exist in the in-between, not fully performed, not fully unguarded, just present enough to feel the weight you've been carrying. And maybe, for a moment, that's enough. No clarity is required. No change is demanded. No decision needs to be made. Just the quiet recognition that the part of you that learned how to perform did so to keep you safe, and the part of you that stayed hidden did so to stay intact. Both belong, and for now, they can rest in the same space, without fighting, without urgency, without needing to be resolved. Just breathing in the same body, just existing as you are.